My family had just moved into a house in the States. It was my first time being there, and I was 5 years old, and for some strange reason, I was excited more than anything. My younger brother was running around the house, and I called to him, and he came over, and I asked him if he wanted to play a game. Upon having a think, we decided the game should be hide and seek. So he went out to hide, and I counted to 20. When I was done counting, I went looking for him, and I couldn't find him. So I began yelling for him. "Raymond! Raymond! Where did you go?" I went to the very top of the house, the 3rd floor, and I thought to look in the closet. He wasn't there, but I did find something. A door. There was a door inside the closet. For some reason, I thought to open it. I was only 5, and curiosity got the best of me, so I opened the door, and inside, it was nothing more than an empty room. Empty except for a desk, and a man and his typewriter. I walked up to him and asked him, "Why are you in my house?" I know a lot of you might think, why didn't I freak out as a 5-year-old? But there was just this strange sense of trust I got from him as he looked at me in surprise. He looked down at me and just said, "Jose, you're not supposed to be in here." I asked him who he was, and his only response was, "Jose, shouldn't you be looking for your brother? I bet he's worried about you." I looked up at him, and he looked back, and I remembered his face seemed quite average. Nothing about him was strange other than the fact that he was wearing all white. He held my hand and told me I should keep looking for my brother. He opened the door and closed it behind me. I didn't think much of it. Like I said, I was only 5. So I went looking for my brother, and I found him in the kitchen, under the sink. I never told him about the man in the closet, mostly because I wanted the man in the closet to be my friend, not his. Anyway, that was the first time I met him, although it was not my last. The second time, my mother was fighting with my stepfather, and I couldn't leave the house. So I hid in the closet. My little brother was at my aunt's house, so it was just me and them. It had been weeks, and I tried to visit the man in the closet, but time after time, I would look in the closet, and the door simply wouldn't be there. Was it a dream? Did I just imagine it in my young mind? But no. This time, it was different. This time, he opened the door, just as I saw the light from the floor. He told me to come inside quickly, and I did. I have no idea how long I was in there with this man. For some strange reason, I trusted him. I never questioned how he knew my name without me telling him. I never asked him for his name. The only personal thing that I knew about this man was that he was from Germany. After talking for what felt like hours, he told me it was fine to leave. He held my hand and opened the door. "Everything's going to be fine, Jose. It might look like it's always going to be this way, but don't worry. Keep your chin up, okay?" As soon as he had led me out, the door closed behind me, and when I looked back, the door was gone again. I walked out of my closet, and it turned out I was in the closet for about 3 hours, and my mother had been frantically looking for me. As time went by, the door behind the closet just seemed never to show up anymore, until the very last day at that house when we were moving out. My little brother was downstairs with my mother, and I wanted to just check one last time. I told my mother I would be back and said I had left some toys in my room. I went to my room and then checked the closet. I saw the door behind the clothes and in the closet. So I went to open the door, and I walked in, and I saw him typing away furiously on his typewriter. I asked him why he hadn't been around, and he just looked at me with that face that said it hurts inside. I just looked at him and said, "I thought you were going to be here for me." And he kept looking back at me with a face that just said, "I'm sorry." He didn't have to say anything. He didn't stand up and uttered a couple of words. It wasn't English. In fact, if I really think about it, it must have been German. Then he just held my hand and walked me out the door. When I finally left the closet, my mom had gone ballistic, looking for me. I was in the closet for a long time. I dwell on this sometimes now that I'm older. Was he a figment of my imagination, or was he something more? I may never know, but it's all thanks to playing hide and seek. Ever since I was growing up, it was rumored that the house next door was haunted. People would come and go like it was a perpetually revolving door. The longest anyone stayed was about 6 months. It was a normal house, upper middle class, tan with a white picket fence, and a good-sized deck in a decent yard. The only slightly creepy thing about this house was that the man who had owned the house had buried all of his dead pets in the back garden, so it was an animal graveyard of sorts. It sat empty for quite some time, and this is where my experience begins. I was in high school when this happened, probably my freshman year. I had gotten together with 2 friends, Carol and Aaron, and we were trying to figure out what to do to keep us from being bored. We then mutually decided to go check the house out and see what all the fuss was about. We walked through the open gate and into the back garden. A cable man had recently come by to do some work, which was very odd since no one actually lived there, and had left the gate open. After standing there for about a minute, we decided to play hide and seek in this new area. We looked around the place and decided to draw the boundary at the front of the back garden. Going inside was off limits. I would count, and they would hide. Well, I found Carol almost immediately, and she decided to help me find Aaron. We looked around for about a minute or so when we heard a noise that sounded like movement in the house, almost as if someone was scurrying across the floor. We assumed that our friend had broken the rule and gone inside the house. "Aaron!" we shouted at the house. "You know, inside's off limits. Get back out here." We expected to hear the door creak open, and Aaron just walk outside, talking about how she just wanted a look. But then we heard her come out from behind the bushes, explaining that she wasn't in the house. We then looked at each other with horror on our faces, and slowly turned and looked towards the large windows that looked over the garden. The house was pitch black, so it was impossible to see inside. We weren't there for very long when I saw something directly in front of the window. It was a young girl, maybe 11 or 12. The only thing that was out of place were her clothes. She was wearing this dark dress with a high collar and 2 braids down the back, almost like something from a history book. She looked sad, and then started mouthing something to me. I couldn't figure out what she meant, but I saw something behind her that made my blood run cold. It was a man, a really tall man. He had a look of pure hatred on his face, and his hand reached out to choke the girl standing in front of him. Just as fast as he appeared, they disappeared. I came back to reality and turned to look at my friends. They looked like they had seen a ghost. I turned to my friend Erin and asked her what she saw, and she described the little girl exactly. We hightailed it out of there as fast as we could, and we have never been back. We finally understood why people do not stay long in that house. About 7 years ago, when I was about 17 or so, my best friend and I decided to relive a bit of our childhood by hanging out at one of those huge outdoor wooden playgrounds at night. My best friend had invited one of her friends to join us, and the 3 of us then played hide and seek. Now is a good time to point out that my town is incredibly boring, and is one of those make-your-own kind of fun places, hence why we were there. Throughout the evening, my friend took several pictures of us playing on monkey bars, sliding down slides, and during our last game of hide and seek, I decided to break the rules and hide in the car out in the parking lot. I stayed in my ingenious hiding spot for several minutes before giving up and returning to the middle of the playground to meet up with the other 2. When I returned, my best friend had the most peculiar look on her face. She was confused because she said that she had seen me on the opposite side of the playground. Supposedly, when she saw me, I was standing up, just staring into the distance with my mouth agape, with the most terrified look on my face. My best friend said she confronted me and asked me what was wrong, if I was okay. She said that I didn't respond, but rather just kept staring, mouth wide and shocked. She assumed that I was trying to scare everyone, so she ran off to carry on with the game. That's when I entered the opposite side of the playground. My best friend recounted all of those events to me, and I stood by the truth that I cheated in hiding in the car. Logistically, It would have been impossible for me to have made it all the way around the 6-foot fence surrounding the playground in such a short amount of time. I completely believe my best friend, and that she was not fabricating this whole story, and she completely believes that I was hiding in the car when she saw my doppelganger. Lastly, after we brushed off the incident and went home, the photographs were quite peculiar. Surrounding me, and only me in the photos, was a thick haze outlining my body. The weather was normal, not too hot, not too cold, which dispels the suspicion that it was steam coming off me. But we have absolutely no idea what it was, and it is incredibly weird. This happened when I was 10. There were about 5 or 6 of us spending the night at my friend Charlie's house. Her parents owned a ranch in the hill country region of Texas, and their home was built on the top of a hill. Other than the dirt driveway up to her house, the hill was wild land covered in cedar trees. It was a clear, slightly chilly night in October or November, long after the sun had gone down and the moon had risen. We stayed out playing hide and seek, using the driveway as a base. Their ranch was far enough out of town and well fenced, so her parents didn't have a problem with it. Anyway, during one of the rounds of hide and seek, me and my friend Gina were the last to hide, and we were so good at hiding that the seekers found everyone else and had enlisted them to find us. Also, we thought we had almost made it back to the road when 3 of the girls unknowingly cut us off. So we ducked down behind a ridge and remained concealed. Gina then threw a rock across the road behind them to divert their attention. We were waiting for them to get far enough off the road to make a dramatic rush for the safety of the base, when I heard what sounded like a rock being dislodged and sliding down the hill behind us. I thought Gina might have done it, so I didn't say anything, but she kind of looked at me and asked if I was okay. I was about to reply when we heard what sounded like one of our friends, Charlie, calling from way down the hill behind us. "Who? Me!" We bolted straight up and yelled at the others, and they came running back to the road, and we told them what we had heard. No one had seen Charlie since we started that round of hide and seek. We took them to the spot where we had hidden from them and called out Charlie's name. For a moment, it was all quiet. Then, faintly, even further down the hill, we heard her say, "Help, I'm stuck." We panicked and ran up the driveway as fast as we could, getting her parents. When we burst through the kitchen door, ready to yell for her mom and dad, she was sitting at the bar eating a popsicle. "I wondered how long it was going to take you all to find me," she gloated. We all flipped out in the way that only 10-year-old girls can. Her parents heard us freaking out downstairs and came down to see what was going on. We told them what happened, and her dad grabbed his shotgun and got into his truck. He went down the drive around the ranch, making sure there wasn't anyone on the property who wasn't supposed to be there, and he didn't find anything. I've always wondered what we heard that night, as it wasn't just me, it was many people. We don't talk about it much, but I know it remained in all of our minds every time we stayed there past sundown. I was at home at my previous apartment, alone. This is a not-so-great neighborhood. My apartment was on the ground level, and my bedroom window faced a back alley. A dumpster sat less than 2 car lengths away, where homeless people often rummaged just before dawn. One morning, I heard a tapping on my window. My back was to the window, and my eyes were now wide open. It was still dark outside. I sleep with my lamp on, and my worn-out vertical blinds were missing a slat, causing a 6-inch gap. So, I knew that whatever or whoever the source of the tapping was could see me lying in bed, plain as day. The tapping was brief, maybe 5 to 6 taps. So, I spent the next 5 seconds or so frozen miserably, trying to convince myself it was something, anything, not a person watching me and tapping on my window. But then came more tapping. Now, I was faced with the terrifying reality that something had been watching me through my window in the dark for who knows how long, and they decided to tap on the window. Had one of the homeless people become aggressive during their dumpster dive? Something told me that nothing good could come from turning around and looking at the window. If he got me to look at him, what then? Remember, my back was to the guy. So, I sat up slowly. rubbing my eyes, and pretended I was too groggy to hear him. I stood up and hazily made my way out of my bedroom as though I were going to the restroom. Once I was out of sight, I ran and considered whether to forget any embarrassment of being in my t-shirt and underwear and bolt out of my front door, which was out of sight from the intruder. I just wasn't sure if I could outrun whoever it was, or whether anyone would help me if I couldn't. Before I could make a decision, I heard the loud pop of my window being pried open. I thought my heart would jump from my chest. At the same time, I could hear my upstairs neighbor, Mike, descending his stairs. I opened my door a few inches and peeked out to ask for his help. Mike was a big guy, and I'd heard he was trained in martial arts of some sort. He didn't hesitate to respond, hustled to the back of my apartment to see what was going on, and within a few seconds, I heard rumbling as someone being thrown against the wall and into the bushes. A few moments later, Mike came around to my front door, telling me not to worry about seeing that guy again. He'd beaten him pretty bad. I wanted to believe Mike, that the would-be intruder was maybe dumpster diving, but that he would hopefully never venture this way again. But it wasn't a homeless person. According to Mike, when the guy escaped, he ran to the front of my building, hopped into a red sports car, and sped off. My neighborhood wasn't a red sports car kind of place. The police later told me that the intruder was likely someone who'd seen me out somewhere and decided to investigate and find out where I lived. So, Mr. Window Tapper, I still wonder what you would have done if you'd gotten inside before Mike caught you. I wonder if you're still lurking where I can't see you, and because of that, I often find myself wishing that Mike had put an end to you. If you found out where I live now, I hope we never meet again. My mom used to date sketchy guys when I was a teenager. I didn't live with her much because she was a horrible role model, so my grandmother raised me for a big chunk of my life. I'm thankful for that, because she taught me so many values and how to be a lady. I later moved in with my dad and stepmom and half-siblings when I was 15, and had a wonderful life with them. When I was 14, I lived with my mother and her sleazy boyfriend Dale for a year in the upper half of the duplex. Her boyfriend had this friend that would come over very occasionally that looked just like the white guy from the Jerky Boys, same hair too, and he creeped me out because he would always stare at me, and I would always catch him doing so. My aunt lived down the block, and I would visit her quite frequently because she was the cool aunt. She was in her 20s, super fun, really pretty, and she had a 1969 Firebird convertible that we would drive around in and blast Aerosmith, as this was in the 90s. So, with that said, I saw her brother-in-law Jeff quite a bit because he was renting out her basement. I thought he was kind of weird but an okay guy. So one night, at about 11:30, I was home alone, and I get a knock on the door. Now, our door had a square glass panel toward the top that was painted over with a little peephole scratched into the paint. I looked through, and it's my aunt's brother-in-law Jeff. I opened the door and said, "Hey, what's up?" He asked me if my mom or Dale were home. I said no, that my mom was at work, and God knows where Dale is. He then asked me if I wanted to come downstairs because he wanted to talk to me. I trusted him because I considered him family, and I was also pretty timid and didn't like saying no to people. So I followed him downstairs to the front porch, and I saw his car parked and still running on the street with the headlights on. Sitting in the passenger seat with the windows rolled down was the Jerky Boys looking dude that hung out with my mom's boyfriend. I paused, and Jeff was like, "Hey, we want to talk to you. We want to ask you something." And he started to gently guide me into the car. My adrenaline was pumping, and all of a sudden, I felt that something wasn't right. I stopped and pulled back a little and tried my best not to look scared. Jeff kept talking sweetly, running his fingers on my shoulders to fix my spaghetti strap and saying, "It's okay, just come closer to me." I pulled away politely and said it was okay. He could ask me right there. He kept sweetly trying to convince me to come into the car so that we could talk and said that it was okay if I was scared, I could just stand in front of the headlights. The second he said stand in front of the headlights, my stomach did a flip, and my whole body started to feel electrically charged because I knew if I were to stand in front of the headlights, I would not be able to see, and it would distract me, thus making it easy for one of them to grab me. I knew right at that moment I was in a very dangerous situation. So I started acting ditzy and dumb because I was afraid that if they thought I was thinking that they were trying to do something that would land them in prison, he would just grab me right there and then, cover my mouth, and drag me to the car so that I wouldn't tell on him. So I started to playfully joke around and said that I wasn't wearing shoes and I didn't want to step in dog poop. Then I saw the jerky boy start to come out of his car, and then I just sprinted to the house. Fast. I ran up the stairs and locked the door. I was shaking so badly. Jerky boy knocks on the door about a minute later and is looking through the makeshift peephole. He starts saying that he needs to talk to my mom's boyfriend. I say that he wasn't home, so he goes away from the door, but I didn't hear him go down the stairs. Then, 30 seconds later, Jeff comes up and knocks and is talking through the door, saying that he needs to talk to my mom's boyfriend. He tries to open the door, but it's locked. I repeat myself and let them know that they weren't home. Jeff starts saying things like, "I'm sorry we scared you, honey. We just want to talk to you about your mom and Dale," and gives other awful excuses. I was scared that they were going to try and kick the door in, so I decided that I was going to try and sneak out the back. I walked towards the back door, and thank God I looked out the back window first, because I saw Jerky Boy standing downstairs at the back door. So, Jeff was at the front door sweet-talking me, and his friend was waiting by the back door. I know what you're probably thinking, right? Call the cops. I don't know why I didn't. I think it was because I was so naive. I was also questioning myself and my judgment because Jeff kept reassuring me at the front door. So, I get to the front door, and Jeff is still there, talking to me and telling me that he felt bad for scaring me. I tell him through the door, trying my best to disguise any hint of fear, that it was okay and that I was sorry I got spooked. I just tried my best to placate him and convince him that I believed him. They eventually left, and once the coast was clear, I snuck out and ran to my friend's house next door. I didn't tell them anything. I just said I was scared and wanted to stay there until my mom came home. Later, I did tell my mom, though nothing really happened, and I thankfully moved to my dad's house 45 miles away 3 months later, and I never saw him again. When I look back on it now, years after it happened, I only perceive just how dangerous of a position I was in. I'm so glad I stuck with my gut, ran back, and locked myself in because, as most of you can imagine, they had very nefarious plans for me. Hey there. Hope you enjoyed these stories. If you can, please like and subscribe. I would appreciate it. See you next time.